Okay, this is Sean Callahan, watercolor artist, and this is Watercolor 101 Part 2. So I'm still going over materials with you. Again, at the end of this, if you have any questions, you can go to my website, dogtiredstudio.net. And my email is connected to that, and you can ask questions, which I will answer. So this part, I want to talk about the rest. Last class, I talked about paper and the importance of it. Again, arches is my favorite, and it really does what it's supposed to do. But Fabriano is also very good. It's a French versus Italian thing, but can't go wrong with arches. So let's talk about pencils. Now, in drawing for watercolor, you don't want the pencil line to do all the talking. In fact, you want it to be in the background. So you want a hard pencil. Pencils are either hard or they're soft. A soft means like charcoal is a soft pencil, or would be called soft, because it's very dark and it leaves a really dark line. Whereas a hard pencil will leave a very light line, which is what you want for watercolor. You're using the drawing as a map to direct you. You don't need it to really show through in this style of painting. So a hard pencil would be an H. This is an H pencil. And as you can see on the top, it will say H. But a lot of times when you go to art supply stores, you can get, they'll have a little piece of paper where all the pencils you can just write on them. But in watercolor, as a general rule, H's are great. You know, they're a light line, and you can get the drawing in, see it, and be able to erase the line pretty easily. So, pencils. Erasers, do not use a number 2 pencil or the pink little thing on the end. If I find out that you've used those, I'm going to find you. So, what I do want you to do is get a kneaded eraser. These are great. They come in a square. You have to be basically an engineer to get the plastic off. This is what they look like when you first get them. Once you get the plastic off, though, it's okay. But what you do is you can just break a piece off like this. And this is an eraser, so you just erase the pencil line when you're done, or if you made a mistake, you can erase it. And if it gets dirty, the way you clean it is you just pull it. Just keep pulling it, and then it's clean. You're good to go. These last forever, unless you get junk in them. You get like sand and stuff in them, you got to throw them out. So anyway, that's a kneaded eraser and pencils. Next up is brushes. Now, this is where I cut corners. I am like the Imelda Marcos of brush collecting. Like, I've got brushes that are really expensive, and I've got brushes that were $1. And I've come to find, because I'm a major scrubber, which you'll see as we go along, cheaper brushes are just fine. You know, I don't need sable brushes made by, you know, sables that were raised on organic cabbage. I just need a brush, as long as it's a watercolor brush. So, you know, when you go online to buy your art supplies, or you go into an art store, they'll have them lined up. Oil painting brushes, acrylic brushes, watercolor brushes. So in those watercolor brushes, you can get synthetic brushes pretty cheap. Now, within that, you can get a round brush or a what are they called? Flat. I don't really use flat brushes, but you might, and if you want one. It's a lot of watercolor artists use flat brushes to get water on the paper really quickly. So they'll get like an inch flat brush. So I wouldn't, you know, discourage that. But I'm a round brush guy, and as far as a collection of them, I would have a 0 as far as numbers go. Now, when you see the brushes on the handle, it's really hard to see, but the number is going to be right there. So this is a 1. See how small it is? The 0 is even smaller. So I would get a 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Done. All round. I would also get the flat one if you want. And also, this is a fan brush. I only use this when I'm doing landscape painting, and you'll see why later on in our journey. But I do have like 3 of these, but you only really need 1. This is a good size too. What is this? This is a number 2. So there's the brushes. Now, how do you hold these brushes? What do you keep them in to keep them protected? $1. This is a gazillion years old. I think I got this when I was 5. Anyway, I think that was like $1 when I did get it, which I really not wasn't 5. But anyway, I just, I can put like 3 or 4 brushes and a pencil and a kneaded eraser in here for traveling, and I'm good to go. And so this is a great tool. But they also have the Japanese ones that you roll, which also keep them safe. You just don't want the heads to get bent and ruined. There's a way to fix that, but we're not going to talk about that yet. Also, this is an interesting, upscale one. You can put brushes in here, or pencils, or both. So that's the containers, and those are basically the brushes. So remember, you don't have to go all out and buy sable brushes or fly to Russia and, all that stuff. That's where you can save some money. Not on paper. Pencils are cheap, and you can save some money on the brushes. Paint. Now again, this is where I don't want you to cut corners. Watercolor paint comes in tubes, but it also comes in cakes. These little square, they're called cakes. So you can buy pre-kits that have cakes of paint in them that you can then replace when they're done. Absolutely nothing wrong with them. A lot of artists like them. They're great for traveling. I prefer tubes because in a lot of my paintings, as you'll see, I use a lot of rich color. And some of that is just right out of the tube with a wet brush, and I get that intensity. So that's why I use tubes. And but you can use cakes as well. But it's about paint. Do not buy the kit that you had in kindergarten. That's not really watercolor. That's not going to help you, or it's just going to make you frustrated. So I want you to get quality art or artist quality paint. So I am a fan of Daniel Smith. You can buy Daniel Smith paint online, danielsmith.com, but I think they are starting to sell in some of these places I gave you, like Jerry's Artorama, Dick Blick, Cheap Joe's, Pearl. I know at least one of them is selling Daniel Smith watercolors now. Now, I love Daniel Smith watercolors because they granulate, meaning as you pull them with water, they kind of have a texture to them. Some watercolor artists hate that. I'm not one of them. So, and I'm not being paid by Daniel Smith to say that. I really do. It just is the paint I love. But artist quality paint, always ask for it. And if you can get this, get this. I'm going to go over my palette as well, the colors that I use. And if you are inclined to email me and ask me for my palette, I have it on my computer and I will attach it to an email to you so you have it as well. So what do you put the paint in? You put it in a palette. But they sell all different kinds of palettes, and some palettes are better than others. Some palettes are open, and so the paint is left out, and it's just not well built for watercolor. But again, it's the least expensive, and a lot of times people buy them because they're only a couple dollars, and in the long run, it's not helping you. So this, I'm a very superstitious person, so if something works for me, I keep it forever. So this, I have like 20 palettes, but this palette I've had forever. It's broken. I use tape to keep it together. And they don't make this palette anymore. I got it at Holbein. I used to live in Vermont where the company was. However, but there are palettes like this. And the reason I'm showing you this one is because it's got all the wells for the paint. And then it's got this side for mixing paint, and then 2 wells to mix paint on this side as well. So I actually just squeeze the tube into these wells. It doesn't matter that they dry. They dry, you just use a wet brush and it wets them again. So it doesn't go bad. And you, unlike me, what you would probably want to do when you set up a palette is go from your warm colors to your cool colors, meaning you'd start with your yellows and then your reds, then your greens, and then your blues, and then your browns, and then your blacks. So the yellows, oranges, and reds are your warm colors, and your blues, greens, and blacks and browns are your cool colors. So you would line them up and put them in your palette. And since you're just beginning, what you can do is, on this side of the page, put the name of the paint where the well is. So you know the name of the paint, and then when you run out, you know which one you have to put in there. So now granted, I've used this palette for so many years, you could blindfold me and I'd know where the colors were. But in the beginning, I just labeled them so I would know. So I suggest you do that. And you know, also this sounds odd, but when you're painting with them, say the name of the paint out loud in the beginning. You should know your paints. This should become your best friend so that you can be blindfolded and know where every single color is. And I can't stress that enough, because you really, the more time you spend with this, the better painter you become. So, and saying the names of the paints out loud, it's just educating yourself, you know. Yeah, I used vermilion to get that. Or I mixed vermilion with ultramarine blue to get that violet. That kind of thing. Or the burnt umber really helped in this piece. So you're educating yourself by saying the name out loud in the beginning. When you don't know your colors, that's how you're going to know your colors. And you'll be amazed how quickly that you remember them. So that's a little trick. Okay, so that's palettes. I think that's all I have for now. So this is well, also, before I go any further, water containers. I like to have two. One is clean water that you're going to bring to your paper. The other one is to wash and clean your brush. So one's for dirty water, one's for clean water. And then you're good to go. So containers, 2. Palette, 1. Paints, you can use tubes, which I prefer, or cakes. Daniel Smith is my favorite. Pencil, you want a hard pencil, which is an H, would work the best. Brushes, I like round brushes. I don't use gigantic brushes, but I have a couple. Paper, I use arches, hot press, because I don't like texture. If you like texture, then you'll want to use cold press. If you want a lot of texture, you want to use rough. If you don't mind stretching paper, you're going to use 140 pounds. If you don't feel like stretching paper, you're going to use 300 pounds. I think that's it for our supplies. So we're kind of good to go. That's everything that you need. And paper towel. And this is going to sound odd, but I either use Bounty, and if I can afford it, Viva. I know that sounds weird, but reason being is because we use the paper towel a lot cleaning our brushes. Cheap paper towel pills, meaning the paper gets all shredded and gets in your brush, and then when you go down to paint, those little pieces of paper get in the paint and on the paper and leaves a speck. So you don't want that. And so Viva and Bounty actually don't do that. I'm sure there are other ones, but those are the two that I kind of stick with. Tape. Now, I do tape my paintings down. Remember I showed you how to stretch paper and we stapled it? A lot of times I'll use tape around the edges of the paper to give it a clean, crisp line. And it also protects the bottom of your hand from the staples. And but you got to be careful about the tape that you use. This is artist tape. It's actually acid-free and archival, and it's expensive. You can use some masking tapes, but make sure you check it out on a little piece of paper and pull it up to see if it sticks or not. You don't want to tear your paper. Okay, I think with this information, you are now armed and dangerous. So our next segment is going to be basic brushwork. It's time to hit the paper with some paint, which is exciting. And we're going to do some really basic stuff. Do a little value study and color combinations and pulling paint. I'll show you what that means, and throwing some salt and spray bottles and different textures and what they, the jargon, when people are at cocktail parties talking about value and I don't know, whatever else they talk about. You're going to be able to talk right back at them. Like, oh, my value is fine. So anyway, I look forward to the next segment where we actually get to start having some fun. All right. Peace out, peeps. Talk to you soon.